Hey folks, how you all doing? So today's video is part one of a two-part series. These videos are going to show where I got my love of music from and the styles of music I love. Also how and where I got those from. And they're obviously from your parents. So I thought I'd make a video of my dad's favourite artists of all time, and then I'll make another one of my mum's favourite artists of all time. Could have gone on with 40 or 50 artists, the same as I could if I made a list of my favourite artists of all time, but I sort of rounded it down just to make it a little more compact, a little less boring. But you'll see with my parents' videos that they got two totally different styles. You'll find my dad's got a more rock orientated style, a more 50s birth of rock and roll style right through to 70s rock, whereas my mum seems to have a more soulful R&B influence over her music. Not all of it, but some of it. It's also interesting to note that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones do not appear in either of my parents' lists, and yet they grew up in the 60s in the UK with Beatlemania and the Rolling Stones. That's because they both thought that the Stones were a great singles band, but not an albums band. And they made some duff singles like, Walking the Dog, Get Off of My Cloud, that sort of stuff. It was a bit cheesy, so they weren't really into that, and they thought, getting into We Love You, Dandelion, all those songs in the late 60s with the hippie thing, trying to get all hippie, they went off them very quickly. They also went off the Beatles around 1966 once they started, Tomorrow Never Knows, and then you've got, the whole hippie, bloody, All You Need Is Love period, and the psychedelic stuff, and Magical Mystery Tour. They went off all that stuff. They were mop top Beatle fans, which is fine. A lot of people are like that, so they're not included in either list. But anyway, let's get on to my dad's list. So there's about 20 artists I'm going to quickly show here, and one of them I couldn't find a compact disc of, simply because I couldn't find an album of vinyl, actually, because we're in the process of redoing my music room. This here is a box. It's another shelving unit which I've yet to make. We've got records out that room out there. We've got them under my table here. We've got them on top of a little cabinet here, just there, right there, which you can't see, and all over the place at the moment. So there's one I couldn't find, or two, one of my dad's and one of my mum's. But let's get started. Dad was born in 1942. He was born in Tottenham in London. His parents owned a shop right out the front of the main entrance of White Hart Lane. They lived above that shop. They got bombed out, moved to the home counties, and Dad grew up in Bedfordshire. Played a bit of cricket for Bedfordshire. Played football as well, soccer, semi-professional cricket. But he never lost his love of music. One of Dad's uncles was a money collector for the Kray brothers, who are infamous in the UK. If you don't know who they are, go and Google them. A pair of infamous crime brothers that terrorised London, or the East End of London, I believe. But yeah, and my grandmother, which is my dad's mum, was one of only a handful of people to actually go to the services of both Kray brothers when they had passed, and there were services for them. So she was pretty well known in that circle of friends, and she didn't circulate in those friends, but because her brother or whatever it was, or brother-in-law, was associated with the Krays, they were sort of taken in as family, which is why she went to both funerals. Anyway, let's get on with my dad's music collection, and what music he loved that inspired me. So first off, we'll start off with There's a couple of these Cockney singers in this list. Three of them, I think. We've got Ian Dury. My dad loves Ian Dury and the Blockheads. All of his stuff, loves it. Also, the band with what my dad calls the greatest lead singer of all time. Any guesses, people? No, it's Noddy Holder, the greatest frontman of all time. According to my dad, probably my second favourite frontman of all time after Steve Marriott. But there you are, big Slade fan. Goodbye to Jane is probably his favourite Slade song as far as I can remember. Next up we'll go a bit of pop. He was a big fan, or not was, he is a big fan of ABBA. Go back to the birth of rock and roll here. Huge fan of Roy Orbison. Neil Sedaka, big fan of Neil Sedaka. Back to the 70s and 80s here. Big fan of the Electric Light Orchestra. Birth of rock and roll stuff again. Buddy Holly. Back to the birth of rock and roll again. Little Richard. And we have obviously Elvis Presley. The first single my dad ever bought was Jailhouse Rock. He played it over and over again until there was a crack in the 45, and he had to rebuy it a second time. But yeah, Elvis Presley. Next up, he's a huge fan of Queen. Freddie Mercury is his second favourite vocalist of all time. Could have gone for Bobby Darin, but I couldn't find any vinyl. But yeah, Bobby Darin, Dion the Belmonts, that sort of thing. He was a fan of all those sort of singers from that period. But I thought I'd put Bobby V up here because you don't see Bobby V very often in the vinyl community. Back to another Cockney knees up duo, and this time it's the incredible Chas and Dave. Hello, Poppy. Next up we have Chuck Berry, another return to the birth of rock and roll. Heading into country now with Gene Pitney. Huge fan of Gene Pitney. I probably could have had about 10 country music artists, but there's only a couple in here I've shown. Back to the 1980s. My dad is a big fan of Adam and the Ants, believe it or not. He loves that whole tribal beat sound of Adam and the Ants. Big fan of Johnny Cash. I could have used either or either here, but I'll show both. Public Image Limited, Sex Pistols. My dad is a huge fan of Sex Pistols and John Lydon in general. He's 82 years old now, and he's still got a Sid Vicious t-shirt, and he still wears it to the shopping centre on occasion. So, you know, he's a dedicated punk rocker, 82 years of age. Back to the birth of rock and roll again. That's Dad's favourite rock singer, singer of that period of the birth of rock and roll, Fats Domino. I tend to agree with him. He's just that little bit ahead of Elvis Presley for me. But yeah, the great Fats Domino, who was having hits almost a decade before rock and roll started. Back to the beginning of rock and roll again, we have the incredible Everly Brothers. Another country singer here in Jim Reeves. As I said, I could have put a dozen country artists in this list, but I just didn't. I put 3 or 4, I think. But yeah, incredible gentleman Jim Reeves. It's more of a crooner than actually a country singer, but they call him a country singer. And last but not least, my dad's favourite crooner of all time, also happens to be my favourite crooner of all time, and Dean Martin. Dad does not like Frank Sinatra. He loves Dean Martin. He loves Tony Bennett, Perry Como, Sammy Davis Jr., but does not like Frank Sinatra, and I am very much the same. Cannot stand Frank Sinatra at all. I love him as an actor. I think he was in some great movies. But yeah, so that's sort of a rough ballpark of where I get half of my musical tastes from. And yeah, that's it. Leave your comments in the comments section below. Little tidbits about the Kray brothers. Yeah, so now you know someone who worked with the Kray brothers and did time with them. Anyway, guys, stay safe, take care. All for now. Catch you around and get ready for part 2, my mum's record collection of her favourite artists. Till next time, guys, stay safe, take care. Bye.